London woke early. The air felt bright and a little warm. Streets around Horse Guards Parade filled with people before the sun was high. Families carried small flags. Tourists checked their phones and lifted cameras over their heads. Children leaned on the metal barriers and bounced on their toes. The city sounded like a soft chorus, footsteps on pavement, bus doors hissing, far music from a band warming up somewhere out of sight. Sergeant Thomas Reed woke before dawn, as he always did on ceremony days. He liked quiet mornings. He shaved slowly, pressed his shirt, and checked every line on his uniform. He ran a cloth over his polished boots until they showed a clear shine. He held his bearskin cap with care, the way he had learned years ago from an older guard who told him, "If you care for small things, you will be ready for big things." Thomas believed that. He did not rush. He moved with steady hands and even breath. He reviewed the rules in his mind while he dressed. Keep formation. Keep posture. Keep eyes forward. Do not engage with the crowd. Do not break the line. He had heard these lines hundreds of times. He respected them. They were there to keep everyone safe and to keep the ceremony clean and calm. He had never had reason to step out, not once in all his years. He wished for the same today. Across town, Amelia Hart sat at a slim desk near a window. She was the palace press secretary, and she liked to be ahead of the day. Her phone sat face up, bright with small alerts. She opened a dashboard she used for big events, keywords, location tags, and live posts that might rise fast. She did not chase drama. She watched for patterns, crowd size, mood, any confusion, or any moment that might be clipped into a short, misleading story. She sipped water and checked the heat index again. It would be a warm day. Warm days sometimes brought fainting, especially for children and older guests. She typed a short note to the event team. More water points, clear shade spots. She kept her tone friendly and calm. Chief Inspector Morgan checked his watch while officers lined up near the parade route. He was a careful man, not loud and very direct. He spoke to the group with a steady voice. They had a map of the route and a plan for each block. "We keep the barriers clear," he said. "We help families find shade. We use clear radio language if we see anything unusual. No sharp words, no guesses. Describe exactly what you see." He reminded them that good communication kept small moments small. He nodded, the group nodded back, and they moved to their posts. Thomas arrived at his position that looked directly onto a long stretch of the barrier. The metal gleamed in the bright light. The pavement already felt warm through his soles. He settled into place and centered his weight. He felt the familiar weight of his cap and the snug pull of his jacket. The band's scales floated in the distance, and then stopped. The crowd shifted from a low murmur to a cheerful buzz. He scanned the faces in a soft, unfocused way, the way that takes everything in but does not stare. A mother and her little boy stood in the first row near him. The boy held a small flag on a thin stick, tapping the rail with it in a slow rhythm. The mother had a kind face and a careful eye. She kept a hand near the boy's shoulder. She looked like she had told him 3 or 4 times already to keep his feet back from the rail. Thomas could not hear them, but he could read the gentle firmness of a parent who wants the day to be special and safe. The sun rose higher. The light turned sharper. Shadows grew shorter. A few people lifted the backs of their hands to their foreheads and squinted. A vendor walked by with cold bottles in a crate, the ice clinking softly. The vendor called out with a happy voice, and several people waved for water. The mother bought one and handed it to the boy. He took a small sip and grinned. He kept tapping. The rail, slower now, like a small metronome to the day. Thomas often found peace in these quiet minutes before a ceremony. He liked the way time stretched. He liked the tiny stories at the barrier. A grandfather teaching a grandchild how to wave with the right timing. A pair of teenagers sharing a joke and pretending they were not excited. A woman holding a sketchbook. ready to draw the horses. He kept his posture, chin level, and let these scenes pass across his vision like clouds. At the palace, the day moved like a clock. A private secretary confirmed times with an equerry. Wardrobe checks finished. A note arrived about a slight change in a root corner due to utility work. The change was small and already secured, but the team discussed it twice because small details matter. Amelia received the same note and added it to her sheet. She had a tab open with heat safety reminders, and she planned to post a simple message from the official account before the parade. "Stay hydrated, look out for one another, enjoy the day." She wrote the words and left them ready, like a glass of water waiting on a table. Chief Inspector Morgan walked along the line and spoke with two officers near Thomas's position. He asked if the first aid station was visible from where they stood. One officer pointed. A small tent with a red sign stood 30 paces back from the barrier gap. Good, Morgan thought. Close by, clear signs, easy route. He reminded them to use plain words on the radio if someone needed help. He did not like codes when a person was unwell. Say medical help needed, say child, say front barrier near the green flag, he said. Don't be clever, be clear. Thomas saw the mother again. She had knelt to tie the boy's shoelace. The boy had bent his head down and kept it down a little too long, like a flower leaning in the heat. The mother touched his hair with a soft, quick hand. The boy stood again, but he did not bounce now. He leaned the flagstick against the rail and rested both hands on the metal. He looked very small against the gray bars. The mother lifted the water bottle again. He took another small sip and made a face. Thomas felt a tiny pull in his chest, the way he felt when he saw someone hold a heavy door open for too long. A small sign, perhaps, but worthy of attention. He kept his face still. He kept his body still, but he let his eyes notice the color of the boy's cheeks, the pace of his breath, the way his knees shifted slightly as if he wanted to sit down. He did not take his gaze away. He did not stare, either. He watched like a lighthouse watches, the sea, steady and patient. Around the corner, the band lined up. The first bright notes of the march floated forward and then rested, waiting. The horses were ready, coats brushed to a smooth glow, harness checked and rechecked. Grooms moved, their hands down leather straps, careful and calm. A groom whispered something kind to a horse that liked quiet words. Everything in the back lines was smooth. Everything in the front lines looked smooth too. Amelia posted the heat reminder from the official account. She saw instant likes. She watched a few videos pop up, children waving, a dog in a tiny bow. Ty, a woman who had traveled from far away showing the flag she had carried on the plane. It was all light and easy. She breathed out, grateful. Then she remembered the warm years when small moments had become big because of a short clip without context. She set an alert for any clip with the main parade tags plus words like push, fall, or fight. She knew that most people were kind and fair, but she also knew that the internet could move faster than truth. She looked out of the window. The sky was clear and bright. Thomas shifted his weight as the sun pressed harder on his jacket. He was used to heat, but he respected it. He checked his own breath the way he checked his posture. Slow in, slow out. The mother near the barrier lifted her hand and fanned the boy's face. She smiled at him again, the kind of smile that says, "You are okay. You are safe." He nodded, but the nod was soft and a little sleepy. He set the small flag down. It slipped and fell between the rail and his shoe. He did not pick it up. On Thomas's left, two teenagers joked in low voices and took a selfie with careful angles. On his right, a couple folded a map and talked about what to do after the parade. The crowd made a gentle, happy sound, like water over stones. In that sound, Thomas heard one small note of strain, the mother's voice, a tone tighter than before, as if she was choosing her words very carefully with the boy. It was not fear. It was care with a small rising line under it. He thought of his own training. He felt the old words again: keep formation, keep eyes forward, do not break the line. He also remembered a newer note from a recent briefing, an update that had come after a review. Duty of care is part of public duty. If a person is in clear distress within arm's reach and no other help can arrive in time, do not let rules stop you from calling for help and doing the safe, correct thing. It had been a small line in a long briefing, but Thomas had kept it. He believed rules were strong when they served people, not when people served rules. The band played a short warm-up line and the crowd clapped. The boy clapped once and then kept his hands on the rail. The mother looked over her shoulder, maybe to find the nearest officer or a first aid sign. She could not see it from where she stood. She faced the boy again and touched his cheek with the back of her hand. Her face changed in a way Thomas had seen before on many days, a small cloud of worry moving across a parent's eyes. Chief Inspector Morgan stepped back from the line and checked the open path between the barrier gap and the first aid tent. Clear. He told himself the plan was good. He told himself the team was ready for anything simple that felt big and anything big that might look simple. He did not say it out loud, but he felt a quiet trust. The music rose, bright and clear, and the crowd leaned toward the road. Flags lifted and waved like small, colorful leaves in a soft wind. The mother near the front barrier kept her hand on her son's shoulder. His name was Leo. He was 6 years, old and loved horses. He had talked all week about seeing the parade. Now his eyes looked heavy, like sleep was pulling at them even while the day was wide awake. Thomas Reed did not move, but he paid close attention. He watched Leo's fingers loosen on the rail and then tighten again as if they were trying to remember their job. The mother, Maya, opened the water bottle and touched it to his lips. "Small sip," she seemed to say. He tried. A little water went in. Then his chin dipped, and his knees bent just a bit. It looked like a small bow, but it was not a bow. It was the quiet, slow drop of a child on a very warm day. Maya's voice changed. It turned careful and urgent at the same time. She put her arm around Leo and tried to lift him a little, to shift his weight against the rail so he would not slide. The people behind her pressed closer, not on purpose, only because crowds do that when something is happening up ahead. The rail held steady, but Thomas saw the small movement of bodies. He saw the tiny gap close around the child. Training spoke inside him. The newer line from the briefing came back first. Duty of care is part of public duty. He did not have to think long. His decision was clear. He stepped one pace forward, then another, smooth and careful, the way a person steps into a small boat without rocking it. He kept his voice low and kind. "Ma'am," he said to Maya, "may I help?" She looked up, saw the uniform, and nodded fast. Thomas placed his hand lightly on Leo's back between the shoulders, not pushing, only steadying. With his other hand, he signaled the nearest officer to make space. He lifted his chin toward the first aid tent in a clear, practiced way that said, "We need a medic." An officer saw the signal and spoke into the radio with plain words. "Medical help needed. Child fainted. Front barrier by the green flag." The words went through the air, clean and simple. Leo's head rested on his mother's shoulder. His face was pale and damp. Maya spoke softly in his ear. "Breathe, my love. I'm here." Thomas kept his hand in place and counted the child's breaths. They were short but steady. He felt the heat under the heavy jacket and knew he had made the right choice. He had broken formation, but he had not broken purpose. He was holding a small life steady in a busy moment. A vendor who had been selling water a few minutes earlier stepped to the side and waved people back. "Give space," he said in a clear voice. Two teachers from a nearby school group noticed and turned to face the crowd behind them, holding out their hands, kind but firm. The circle around Maya and Leo grew a little looser. Air moved again. The rail no longer pressed against the boys' legs. The danger of a crush passed. It had all taken seconds. On a small step stool farther down the barrier, a tourist lifted a phone and pressed record. The clip began just as Thomas reached in. It showed a tall guard in a bright uniform, leaning toward a child at the rail. It did not show the moment before, when Leo's knees had bent and his head had dropped. It did not show Maya's quick distress. The camera could not feel the heat. It did not hear the careful radio call. It only caught a hand, a uniform, and motion. The band played a flourish, and people cheered without knowing anything had happened. At the same time, the phone clip ended. The tourist, excited to have filmed a guard moving, something rare, typed a short caption that sounded dramatic but was not careful. It mentioned a grab and a break-in formation. The clip went online and began to move from one screen to another, very fast. It was a tiny thing, but it ran like a spark across dry grass. Chief Inspector Morgan heard the first radio words from the officer by Thomas's post. He moved that way at once. "I'm coming," he said into his mic. "Keep the path clear." His steps were quick but not rushed. He had walked this distance in drills many times. He saw the first aid tent ahead and a medic stepping out with a small kit. Good. He saw the gap in the barrier. Good. He saw Thomas standing close to Maya and Leo, steady and composed. Good. Everything looked like care, not chaos. On the palace, communications dashboard, Amelia Hart saw a sudden spike in mentions with 2 parade tags and 1 sharp word from the phone clip's caption. She clicked. The clip came up. It was only a few seconds long. It showed a partial view, and the angle was not kind. She watched it twice, then again. She knew how clips could bend truth. She did not jump to a statement. She marked it and started 2 fast tasks at once. First, find more angles. Second, call the event team to ask if anyone on the ground had eyes on a child near the green flag. Back at the barrier, the medic reached Maya and Leo. "We'll get him to shade," she said. She checked the boy's pulse with gentle fingers and nodded. "Likely heat. We'll sit him down and give him air." Thomas eased back just enough to let the medic in front. He did not leave. He stayed to keep the path clear and the small circle calm. He kept people from leaning forward with one open hand and a quiet, respectful look. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Morgan arrived and took in the scene, detail by detail. He spoke to the officer who had made the call. "Good. Clarity," he said. "Keep that lane open." He looked at Thomas and gave a quick professional nod that meant, "I see what you did and why." Then he turned and stepped 2 paces back to manage the flow. He asked for a folding chair to be brought. Within moments, Leo sat in the chair under a small patch of shade, drinking water from a paper cup the medic had filled. Color slowly returned to his cheeks. For a minute, everything went quiet again. The band moved past. Horses trotted with polished grace. The crowd clapped. Maya let out a long breath she had been holding. She thanked the medic, then turned to Thomas. Her eyes were wet, but bright. "Thank you," she said in a voice that carried only to him. He gave a small nod, nothing more, because the day was still moving and he was still on duty. But his eyes showed relief. Just then, a different kind of wave moved through the area. Words, not wind. 2 officers at the edge of the crowd received a message from someone who had seen the clip on a phone and misunderstood. "Guard pushed a child," that person said, repeating the caption. It was not true, but the phrase was sticky. One officer, unsure, sent a brief, clumsy radio note that did not match what had actually happened. "Guard out of position. Hands on child," he said. "He meant no harm. He was trying to be precise." But without the words medical help and fainted, it sounded wrong to anyone who did not see the scene. Those few words moved across the radio net to a room where event coordinators listened for key phrases. One of them, new to the job, and nervous, flagged it and repeated it with a little more heat and a little less care. Amelia, still at her desk, saw the flag and felt the way it pulled against the clip she had watched. She called at once. "I'm seeing a clip that lacks context," she said calmly. "Do we have a confirmed medical incident? A child fainted? Please confirm." The coordinator checked again and reached the first officer who had called in properly. "Medical," he said. "Child fainted. Guard assisted." The coordinator nodded and corrected his note. A small patch of confusion began to clear, but confusion doesn't always move in one direction. At the same time, a junior aide, overhearing parts of two different conversations, hurried to a senior staffer with a messy summary. "A guard may have broken rules with a member of the public." The senior staffer, trying to keep the event smooth, walked fast to a private secretary with an even shorter line. "There was a breach. Action is being taken." The private secretary, careful by nature, did not repeat those exact words. He waited. He asked for a clear report. He wanted the truth, not a blur. At the barrier, truth stayed simple. The medic checked Leo again. His pulse was better. His eyes were brighter. She smiled at him and asked about breakfast. He talked about toast and jam. She nodded and said he would feel steadier soon. Maya thanked everyone again, including the vendor who had helped create space and the teachers who had faced the crowd. The vendor shrugged with a friendly smile that said, "Of course." The teachers returned to their students, who looked relieved that the little boy was okay. Thomas stepped back one pace, then another. He returned to his position in the line, slow and exact. He reset his stance and lifted his chin, but he kept the corner of his vision on Leo and Maya for a little longer. He listened for any sign that the child might need help again. He heard only ordinary sounds. The band, the soft talk of the crowd, the clop of hooves, the bright notes of a day regaining its shape. Morgan checked once more with the medic and then with the officer who had first called in clearly. He thanked them both with simple words. "Good work," he said. Plain words saved time. He then found the officer whose radio note had been clumsy. He did not scold. He used the moment to teach. "Say what you see," he said. "If it's medical, say medical. If it's care, say care. Words guide actions." The officer nodded, grateful for the clarity. Amelia's screen changed again. A second clip appeared from a different person farther back. It showed more of the scene, the child drooping, the mother calling for help, the guard stepping in with open hands, the medic arriving. It fit the picture she had already built in her head. She saved it and tagged it for later. She sent a short note to the event team. "We have fuller context, please." The parade moved on, bright and tidy, but a different kind of noise began to rise. Short messages, quick guesses, and the spin of a few words that did not match the whole scene. A small phone clip, only seconds long, traveled from one screen to another. It showed a hand, a uniform, a child, and movement. It did not show heat, worry, or the gentle way the medic had taken over. It did not show the vendor helping to make space. It did not show the teachers facing the crowd with calm hands. It was a puzzle with too few pieces, and people rushed to finish the picture anyway. Amelia Hart watched the numbers climb on her dashboard. She saw comments stack up under the short video. Some people asked for context. Some people did not wait for answers. Amelia did not join the noise. She built a simple, careful plan. First, she would gather facts from the ground with names and times. Second, she would look for a fixed camera view. Fixed cameras did not chase drama. They watched quietly and kept truth steady. Third, she would prepare 2 gentle sentences about well-being, ready to go only if needed. She kept her voice in her own head soft and measured, the way she wished. The whole internet could be. Chief Inspector Morgan walked his loop and returned to the front section. He listened to the radio. He heard two kinds of words. The plain ones from the officer who had called in medical help at the start, and the vague, messy ones that had bounced from a worried onlooker to an uncertain officer, and then into the air like a rumor with a microphone. He paused near a lamppost, pressed the radio to his shoulder, and spoke in a steady tone. "Stand by for a clear update," he said. "Child is recovering in shade. No disorder. Repeat, no disorder. Guard acted to support medical need." Most of the line relaxed by a small degree, but not everyone heard him at once, and not every message reached the same ears at the same time. That is how busy days work. Clean words and unclear words pass each other like trains in fog. Near Thomas Reed's position, two officers came up beside him. Their faces were polite, their tone respectful. One of them, a woman with calm eyes, spoke first. "Sergeant Reed," she said quietly, "we need to take a brief statement from you away from the barrier," she added, "because words matter. You are not in trouble. We must record what happened, that's all." Thomas met her eyes and nodded. He understood. He had stepped out of line. It had been the right thing to do, and yet it was still an action that needed a note in a log. He took one steady breath, checked that Leo was sitting well and sipping water, and then gave a small nod to Maya. She understood the nod, too. "Thank you." All well here. As Thomas stepped back with the officers, Maya rose from the folding chair, trying to follow with her words. "Please tell whoever needs to know. My son fainted, and the guard helped," she said. Her voice was clear, but the band came by again with a bright, cheerful phrase, and her line dissolved under the music like chalk in rain. The medic touched her arm gently. "I will write it down," she said. "We'll make sure it is heard." The officers led Thomas to a quiet corner just past a row of planters. It was not far. He could still see the barrier from the edge of his vision. They did not rush. They did not grip his arms. They simply made space around him the way one makes space around a fragile vase when the table wobbles. A supervising sergeant with a clipboard met them. He had a thoughtful face and a habit of checking details twice. He began with the basics: name, rank, time, place. Then the 5 words Thomas was ready to say. "A child fainted. I assisted." The supervising sergeant wrote in neat, square letters. He asked Thomas to describe, step by step, what he had seen and done. Thomas spoke calmly. "I observed signs of heat stress, pale skin, heavy eyelids, limp posture. The mother tried to support the child. The crowd pressed slightly forward. I moved forward with open hands, supported the child's upper back, and signaled for a medic. A medic arrived within seconds and took the lead." The sergeant nodded and kept writing. He liked the words observed, supported, and signaled. They sounded like care, not confusion. At the same time, in a cool room with quiet carpet, a junior aide repeated a messy version of the day to a senior staffer. "There was a break in formation," the aide said. "A child was involved. Someone said the word grab." The senior staffer did not love that word. It stuck to things and left marks even when it was not true. He did what careful people do. He called for the private secretary and asked for a clean report. The private secretary, already collecting pieces of the puzzle, stepped into a small office and lifted the phone to reach Chief Inspector Morgan directly. "We have a brief video online," he said gently. "We are gathering facts. Please confirm." "The child is all right?" Morgan answered at once. "Yes. Child is recovering. Medic is with him. No disorder." The private secretary repeated the words to make sure he had them right. He wrote them in quiet ink. Child is recovering. No disorder. He breathed out. The senior staffer, still uneasy, asked a second question. Was a guard out of position? The private secretary did not dodge the point. Yes, he said, with cause, to assist. His tone was steady. He knew the difference between a rule bent for safety and a rule broken for no good reason. He said he would prepare a summary when all the facts were clear. He did not use bigger words than he needed. He did not say more than he knew. He did not rush to the end of a sentence he had not written yet. Back at the Planters, the supervising sergeant asked Thomas if anyone else could confirm the sequence as he described it. Thomas answered with the same calm clarity. The medic can confirm. A vendor with a water crate helped to create space. 2 teachers helped, facing the crowd with open hands. The sergeant wrote this down word for word. He liked listing real, people with simple roles. It made events feel like they belonged to humans, not rumors. He then asked Thomas to wait nearby while he checked one more thing. Thomas stood with his hands folded behind him, posture easy. He watched the sunlight flicker on a small leaf. He did not feel angry. He did not feel worried. He felt like a man standing halfway across a bridge, trusting the far side to be there when he reached it. A few meters away, another kind of bridge wobbled. A person with a loud social media account reposted the short clip with a caption that piled on more guesses. It used words that attract attention. Sharp words, sticky words. Those words found people who liked sharp, sticky things. The numbers. Under the clip jumped again. Amelia saw them. She did not feel small. She felt steady. She sent one short message to her colleague on the ground. Please locate fixed camera near green flag. We need the whole arc. The colleague replied within. A minute. On it. CCTV post number 4 covers that line. Requesting pull now. Amelia also reached the medic by phone through the event team. The call was short. The medic confirmed the simple truth. A child fainted. A guard supported. We provided care. The child improved. Amelia wrote it down with exact times. She asked, for the names of the vendor and the teachers, not for public use, but for accuracy. The medic gave a first name and a stall number for the vendor. The teachers left a simple note with their school name. It was enough to anchor the story to real people. Chief Inspector Morgan met the supervising sergeant by the Planters and read the notes. He asked one careful question. Did anyone instruct that the guard be removed from duty? The sergeant shook his head. No removal, a brief statement only. Morgan nodded. He had heard a whisper that someone somewhere had used a stronger word, the kind that turns a check-in into something harsher. He wanted to make sure the ground matched the good sense in the notes. It did, but whispers travel. Another junior staffer, passing a doorway, caught the quiet phrase, guard out of position, and carried it into a different room as guard misconduct. The person he told did not like that phrase. He dressed it up even more, putting a heavy jacket on a light fact. Soon a tight sentence moved across one more hallway. Action is being taken. No time, no context, no tone. Just wait. The private secretary, hearing an echo of that wait, chose a different path. He walked to a door, knocked, and asked for a moment with the king. He gave a calm, exact account. A child had fainted. A guard had supported. The child was recovering. Routine had resumed. A short clip without context was moving online. Facts were being gathered. He asked a simple question. How would His Majesty like the team to proceed while facts were collected? The answer was equally simple. Follow protocol. Confirm the truth before any conclusion. Clear, fair, and calm. Yet even clear words can grow crooked if they pass through too many hands. Someone heard follow protocol and translated it as take firm action. Someone else heard firm action and thought it meant something larger than a brief statement. It was like a children's game where a sentence starts simple and grows strange by the time it reaches the last child in the circle. The circle was big today. While circles spun in rooms, a small boy finished a paper cup of water. Leo looked up at Maya. "I feel better," he said in a small, honest voice. The medic smiled and asked him to stand slowly. He did, and the world did not tilt. His small flag made a soft sound against his leg as he moved. Maya thanked the medic again. She asked where she could leave a note for someone in charge. The medic pointed her to a nearby table with a clipboard. "Write what happened in your own words," she said. "It helps." Maya wrote slowly, careful to be clear. M. Clouds drifted across the sun and brought a brief, welcome shade, but inside a few offices the air felt tense. A chain of half-heard messages had stretched itself into a tight line. In that line, the words, "Follow protocol," had changed shape. Somewhere along the way, someone added more weight than the words could carry. A small group was told to bring the guard in at once. It sounded firm, it sounded urgent. It was meant to be orderly, but it did not match the simple truth that had happened at the barrier. Two officers who had earlier taken Thomas Reed's statement now saw a different team step onto the route with quick steps. The new team had a narrow brief and little context. One of them spoke into a radio in short, clipped phrases. Subject identified, proceeding. His tone was not unkind, just brisk. He scanned the line until he found Thomas. Thomas stood steady. In his place, eyes forward, posture even. He looked like a picture of calm duty because that is what he was. At the same time, Amelia Hart received the fixed camera file and the witness notes. She checked the times, the angles, and the names. The wide view was clear. The notes were clear. She placed them in a short bundle that could be understood by anyone, even a person who had not been there. She called the private secretary's office. "We have the full sequence," she said gently. "CCTV shows the child faint first. The mother calling for help, the guard supporting, the medic arriving. The boy improves. We also have witness notes and the medic's brief." Her voice was steady. She did not add opinion. She handed over a map of the truth. The private secretary knew that clear maps were most useful at a crossroads. He walked with the file to a quiet room and waited at the door. When he entered, he explained in short, plain sentences. "A brief, online clip has caused confusion," he said. "But the complete footage shows a different picture. A child fainted. A guard supported. The medic took over. The child is well." He set the file on a small table and pressed play. The room watched in silence. The wide frame made a difference. It always does. You could see Leo's knees soften. You could see Maya's quick attempt to hold him up. You could see Thomas step forward with care and signal for help. You could see the medic arrive with calm hands. Nothing was sharp, nothing was wild. It was a neat chain of good choices. The king watched closely, not for drama, but for detail, placements, timing, the way people moved around the child to give him air. When the video ended, the room felt lighter, like a window had been opened. "Have we spoken with the mother?" he asked. "We can. Within minutes," the private secretary said. The call was placed at once. Maya's voice came through, a little tired but warm. She told the story as any parent would. The heat, the dizzy moment, the kind hand that kept her child safe until the medic arrived. She thanked everyone who had helped and asked only that people remember to bring water for children on warm days. Her words were simple and kind. "Thank you," the king said, his tone calm. "We are glad your son is well." When the call ended, he gave one instruction, clear and direct. Ensure the guard is treated with respect. Confirm the facts on the ground. And share a short, measured note that keeps the focus on the child's well-being and thanks the team for their care. While these words traveled, the brisk team had nearly reached Thomas. Chief Inspector Morgan saw them and stepped in with a hand raised, not as a barrier but as a pause button. "Hold," he said evenly. We have updated information. He presented the supervising sergeant's notes, the medic's brief, and the key times. He did not argue. He placed facts in front of them like clean tools on a table. The team lead read quickly, then listened to his earpiece. A new message had just arrived, firm and calm. Do not remove the guard. Acknowledge his assistance. Resume normal order. The team lead's face softened. Understood, he said. He turned to Thomas and gave a small, respectful nod. Thank you for your patience, Sergeant Reed. The moment changed shape without any loud movement. It was like watching a sail catch the right wind after a moment of flapping. Everyone breathed easier. Thomas stayed at his post, but inside he felt a quiet relief settle through his shoulders. He had not worried for himself as much as he had worried about the way a short clip could bend a day. Seeing the calm return around him felt like watching a knot loosen under gentle fingers. He kept his eyes forward and let the day continue. Amelia drafted a short message and walked it through the careful steps she always used. It was 3 sentences, no more. During today's ceremony, a child near the front barrier briefly felt unwell in the warm weather and received prompt care from on-site medics. A guard stepped forward to support the family until the medic arrived. We're grateful to the public, staff, and volunteers who helped ensure everyone's well-being. She did not name the child, and she did not point fingers. She let kindness and clarity do the work. She then added a quiet note for internal learning, not for the public. When heat is forecast, please increase shade markers and water points, and remind teams to use plain words on radio, medical help needed, to prevent confusion. It was not a scold. It was a small, useful improvement, the kind that makes the next day better than the last. Near the barrier, Maya and Leo stood again, both steadier now. Leo's cheeks had a touch of color. He held his small flag with care and traced a tiny circle on the air. The medic smiled at him and said, "Slow and easy." He nodded like a very serious 6-year-old. Maya looked across the way and caught sight of Thomas, still in his place. She placed her hand over her heart for a second. It was not a grand gesture, just a small thank you that needed no sound. Thomas did not move, but he felt the meaning of it like sunlight on stone. Chief Inspector Morgan used the quieter minutes to gather the people around the earlier radio confusion. They stood in a semicircle near the planters. "We are all on the same side," he began, "and today shows how small words can become big shadows if they are not clear." He repeated the good example. Medical help needed. Child fainted. Front barrier by the green flag. He demonstrated the less helpful phrasing without pointing at anyone. Hands-on child, he said, is incomplete and sounds wrong in the air. He smiled kindly and added, "We learn, we improve, and we move on." The officers nodded with real understanding. No one felt scolded. Everyone felt steadier. In the quiet room, the private secretary placed the CCTV clip and the notes into a simple file with exact times and names. He labeled it plainly, not with drama. Barrier faint. Assistance provided. He liked files with clear titles. They helped future people understand past days without adding noise. He also wrote a short summary of steps taken and included one sentence that mattered to him. Protocol was upheld in spirit and in action, with duty of care at the center. A few floors away, a senior staffer who had earlier felt uneasy came by with a rueful look. "I moved faster than the facts," he admitted. The private secretary nodded, not to shame him, but to accept the honesty. "We all aim for calm," he said. "Today ends well. Let's keep it that way." They both understood that big institutions are made of people, and people do better when they put care before speed. The phone clip with the sharp caption did not vanish, but it began to look smaller as the fuller view appeared. A few accounts posted wider footage and short, fair notes about the heat and the medic. The earlier dramatic line began to lose its grip. Where some comments had been quick and hard, new ones were soft and precise. "Looks like the child fainted," one person wrote. "Glad the guard helped. Hope the boy is okay." It was not a big victory. It was a quiet setting right, and quiet can be strong. As the ceremony drew toward its end, a gentle message reached Thomas through his sergeant. "After the parade, please come to the side room," it said. The tone was neutral, the kind used for many small matters. When the time came, Thomas followed a short corridor that smelled faintly of polish and paper. In the side room stood Chief Inspector Morgan, the supervising sergeant, and a palace steward with kind eyes. They did not make a fuss. They simply thanked him for acting with judgment and care. "There will be no mark against you," the supervising sergeant said. "We are recording your action as assistance provided during a medical incident." The steward added, "There is appreciation for your calm." The words were plain. Thomas liked plain words. He said thank you and asked after the child. The ID steward smiled. "He is fine," she said. "He left with his mother after a short rest. He waved his flag on the way." Later, in a small private moment away from cameras, a quiet thank you was given more personally. It was brief and sincere, the kind of moment that lives more in the heart than on a page. It did not need a document. It did not need a headline. It was simply a human exchange between people who care about duty done well. On the communication side, Amelia watched the statement go out at a calm pace. The words found people who prefer sense over noise. A few press messages asked for more detail. Amelia answered with the same lines she had prepared, brief, factual, kind. She did not feed debate. She fed understanding. Then she closed her laptop for a moment, stood by the window, and let her eyes rest on a patch of sky shaped like a small lake. Maya and Leo reached home in the afternoon glow. She poured him a glass of water and sliced an apple. He told a small, excited version of the morning to his grandmother on a video call. The horses, the drums, the moment when everything went sus. Morning came soft and clear, like a new page. The city stretched and yawned. People went to work with coffee in their hands and stories in their heads. Some talked about the bright bands and the shining horses. A smaller number told a quieter story about a boy who fainted, a mother who stayed calm, a guard who stepped forward, and a team that chose patience over panic. The short phone clip still existed, but it did not feel as big as it had felt the day before. It was like a small cloud that had lost its shadow. Amelia Hart sat at her desk with a notebook open. She liked to write lessons while they were still fresh. Her list was simple. Add more shade markers on warm days. Place a small "water here" sign near each vendor who agrees to help. Share a one-page radio guide before every event with plain phrases: medical help needed, child unwell, front barrier by the green flag. Remind the social team to look for full angles before any message. Keep the tone kind. Keep the message short. She wrote each line like she was packing a small, smart bag for a future trip. Chief Inspector Morgan led a short debrief in a quiet room near the route. No speeches, no blame. He held up a small card with the good words from yesterday. "Say what you see," he said. "Use simple nouns. Use the word medical when it is medical. You do not protect anyone by hiding the real words." He asked 2 officers to act out a tiny scene. A child feeling faint, a first call on the radio, a gentle hand guiding a crowd to give space. They spoke in calm voices. Everyone watched. Everyone learned. It took 7 minutes. It might save 20 the next time. Sergeant Thomas Reed reported to the barracks and polished his boots. He always did this after a ceremony, even when his boots already shone. It helped him settle. A young guard came by and asked shyly, "Did you worry when you stepped out?" Thomas thought for a second. "I did not worry," he said, "because I knew why I was stepping. I felt sure of that." The young guard nodded as if a knot inside him had loosened. In a small kitchen across town, Maya made toast for Leo. He sat at the table with colored pencils and a serious face. He drew a simple picture: a tall figure in a bearskin cap, a small boy with a flag, and a big sun with gentle rays. Under it, he wrote in careful letters, "Thank you." Maya tucked the drawing into an envelope. On the front, she wrote, "To the kind guard who helped us." She did not know his name, but she believed the note would find its way. At a market stall, the vendor who had called for space added a hand-lettered sign to his cart. "Hydration station. Ask for water." He placed a bowl of ice and a stack of cups underneath. He sold bottles as usual, but the sign meant something else too. It meant he saw people. Two children stopped and asked what hydration meant. He explained it simply. "It means water helps you feel strong, even when the day is hot." They nodded like they had learned a secret. The two teachers who had faced the crowd wrote an email to their school. It told the story with calm detail and ended with one line for the students: "Kindness and clear words help everyone get home. Safe." The head teacher read it out loud during morning assembly. A few children raised their hands. One asked, "Can we help at events?" The head teacher said, "You can always help by watching with care, giving space, and staying calm." In the communications office, Amelia reviewed the previous day's statement one more time. It still felt right: short, factual, kind. A reporter requested a longer comment, something that might turn into a headline. She replied with the same gentle lines and added one small note: "On warm days, please remember water and shade for young children." It was less a quote and more a reminder. She liked reminders that stayed useful after the story was done. Inside a tidy file room, the private secretary labeled a thin folder with quiet words: "Barrier faint, assistance provided, date." He slid inside the CCTV still, the medic's brief, and 3 witness notes. He added a short summary of steps taken during and after. At the bottom, he placed a single sentence in neat handwriting: "Protocol and duty of care can stand side by side." He closed the folder and placed it where future teams could find it. A courier delivered Maya's envelope to the barracks. It took a day to travel across the right desks, but it arrived. Thomas opened it in the late afternoon. He held the drawing with both hands. The tall figure wore a big hat. The small boy smiled. The sun looked kind. The words, "Thank you," were a little wobbly and very brave. Thomas placed the drawing inside his locker door with a small magnet. Every time he reached for his cap after that, the drawing would look back at him and remind him why the cap mattered. Not every corner of the internet changed its mind. Some comments stayed sharp. That is how the world is. But the louder messages did not feel as sticky now that fuller footage and calm words were in the mix. A short news segment showed the wider view and spoke of heat safety at public events. The presenter ended with a simple line: "Context matters, and so does care." The segment did not trend, but that was fine. It did a quiet job for people who wanted to know. There was one more small moment that mattered to a few people and to no one else. The next week, on a cool morning, a small group visited the Horse Guards with their class. At the front was Leo, now cheerful and proud to be back on his feet. The children learned about uniforms and history. They learned how to stand still and why standing still is sometimes a kind of service. At the end, as the class was guided toward the exit, they passed the line where Thomas stood. Maya held Leo's hand and paused just enough for the boy to lift his picture. It was a copy now, not the original, but it carried the same heart. Thomas did not move because he was on duty, but his eyes softened in a way that children notice. The teacher whispered to the class, "Sometimes the bravest thing you do is small and quiet." The children nodded like a wave in a field. "Chief." Inspector Morgan printed the radio phrase card on thick paper and asked that it be tucked inside every event clipboard. He also asked that first aid signs be raised a little higher and that a small blue arrow be added to each one so that even a tired person could find help without thinking. He liked changes you could point at with your finger. He liked solutions that did not need long speeches. Amelia met with a group of volunteers who help at public events. They brainstormed small, friendly ideas. Loner hats for children who forgot. Theirs, chalk circles on the ground to mark the best shade in the afternoon. A simple hand signal that says, "Give space," that anyone can use without words. They drew the hand signal in 3 steps and printed it on a card with a picture of a smiling crowd. It looked almost like a game, and maybe that was the secret. Safety that feels easy tends to work. The private secretary added a 1-line note to the next week's schedule template. If a short clip appears, wait for the longer view. He placed it under the weather forecast because both items help people plan. He also wrote a thank you note to the medic team and the nearby vendor. The words were polite and real. "Your calm action helped," the note said. The vendor pinned his copy inside his stall, next to his hydration station sign. It made him stand a little taller. Some of the people who had reposted the first short clip later updated their posts. A few wrote, "Full video shows the guard helping." Others simply deleted the old caption and said nothing. That was fine, too. The world does not always need a long apology. It needs the next right step. As days passed, the story moved from news to lesson. The lesson was not a lecture. It was a set of small, good habits people could carry forward. Bring water. Notice shade. Use plain words. Check the wider view. Choose patience. In kitchens and guard rooms and offices, those habits sat quietly, like useful tools on a shelf. One evening, Thomas walked home the long way. He passed a playground and watched a group of kids invent a game with a rope, a ball, and a loud laugh. A grandmother clapped from a bench. A pair of friends shared a sandwich with too much mustard and did not mind. He thought about rules and people, about lines and hands, about how a day can go wrong or go right over the space of 2 breaths. He felt grateful for the way it had gone. He also thought about the short chain of moments the press secretary had explained to him later, how the first clip had spread, how a small team had almost made a big mistake, how a careful pause had made all the difference. He did not feel proud in a large way. He felt proud in a small way, like a chair that does not wobble when someone sits down. He wished that feeling for everyone who works in busy places. On a cool afternoon not long after, a brief private meeting took place. It was not for cameras. It was short and human. Simple thanks were said for judgment and care. A kind word was also passed along for Maya and Leo. The message was the same on every line. "We are glad the child is well." Thomas listened with the same steady attention. He gave to everything. He said little. He carried the moment like a smooth stone in his pocket, light and sure. Weeks later, another ceremony filled the streets. This time, the heat was gentler, and yet the new shade markers stood out like small flags of care. The water here, signs were easy to spot. The radio words were crisp, without being cold. A child asked a question about the horses and got a sweet answer from a groom who loved her work. The day moved like a river that knows its banks. The truth that had once been small now felt like the ground under everyone's feet. A child had fainted, a guard had helped, a team had Leah.